So welcome to Gerrard from Titleist Vokey.
Thank you.
So pleased to have you here. Thank you for dropping in. This is relatively impromptu, so it's great to have you here and to do a little bit of a talk about the wedge products.
Great to be here. I'm always happy to talk about wedges, particularly the importance of finding the right one.
I think wedges it's the bit of the game from a fitting point of view. Everyone knows drivers, everyone knows about fitting for those, loft and spins and launch angles and irons as well, set makeup, but wedges is still this, I think it would probably be an enigma in terms of how do you get the right setup of wedges? There are so many rights and not necessarily that many wrongs.
Yep.
It's lots of shades of grey and very little black and white.
Yes.
So I think number one for me, I think the Vokey brand has become, you know, Bob's a legend in the game and Titleist wedges have been so strong over the years. But within a wedge, everyone sees a wedge just looks like a kind of just a blade.
Just a golf club, right?
With a wide sole and a bit of shape on it.
Yeah. The
How
visible
much
technology
actually goes into this?
Yeah, so that visible technology, even before we get to that, you talked about the importance of fitting. But I think for most golfers, it's what are we going to get out of that, right? And I think when you think about the way we design wedges, we look at three key areas. So shot versatility. We want to make sure that we have different soles for different playing styles, different conditions. So you talked about driver fitting. We all know we want nice high launch, really fast ball speed, and optimal spin. Great. And I think golfers really get that. What do we want for wedges? You want that versatility. You want great contact. You want the ball to have the right carry distance. You want to be able to stop. So groove cutting is really important. All that sort of stuff. And Simon, as you said, you dig in here of, we can't see any of that. So we start with the grinds, and that's something that is really important. You know, bounce, I think, has been an easy conversation for some people to tell, not so easy for other people to maybe understand.
Well, it's a word that people now know about.
Right.
Well, they've heard bounce, but again, with the thing, people come in and say, what is bounce?
What is bounce?
What actually is it?
Yeah, and it's really the relationship between that leading edge and where that first point of the club touches the ground. Okay, now we're doing that at impact though. So how do you present this club to the ground, whether that's the fairway grass or the sand, are you using an open or a square face? And that's really why we have those different soles, because some players like to do different things. You know, for that player who wants to lay this M grind here open, the last thing they want to see is that leading edge exposed and sitting right up, particularly summertime, firmer conditions. That's going to give you the heebie-jeebies. You're going to get pretty scared seeing that. So we want to make sure that we can give you that ability to lay it open without it sitting up. Other players are playing it more square. So I think the first thing, you know, is really grinds, and then the two parts that we really concentrate hard on. So Bob, Aaron Dill, Will Harvey here in the UK, and Kevin Tesistro, who heads up our R&D team and his team, they're really looking at the cool stuff under the hood. So we're talking center of gravity, which is a scary term for a lot of players, but essentially talking about, hey, if we move that center of gravity up and down, we can dictate ball flight, which then helps with distance control and certainly spin. The best players in the world, Simon, are looking for lower ball flight. They have told us there's no such thing as too low. So we're working on ball flight, particularly in those higher lofts, lob wedges, 56, 58, 60 degrees. Can we get you the optimal launch? I think golf can be a little game of opposites sometimes too. So one of the things that maybe a lot of golfers don't know until they come and get fit with you is, hey, if I flight it lower, the ball's probably going to come out faster, actually carry further, but then stop quicker. And that's really what you're seeing when you're seeing some of those better players control that ball. So CG movement's really important, both up and down, and then left to right. So I think we all know that when we get fit for irons or driver, the dispersion is really important. We want to hit more fairways, that's obvious. We're also making really conscious efforts to improve CG in terms of direction for wedges. And for a lot of players, that could be just the difference between hitting more greens than missing, or, you know, just missing the green and being plugged in a bunker, or having a birdie putt from 10 feet. So that center of gravity movement is really important, and we have progressive CG through the lofts. So someone playing a 46, we're going to have that center of gravity nice and low, kind of matches your full swing irons, plenty of launch, plenty of speed. As we get into that middle of the set, 54, 56, it's kind of a mid CG. as we look at the higher lofts like a 58 and a 60, that center of gravity has gone up to knock the ball flight down, again giving that control.
But I think some of that's quite visual in how broad, if you look toe end on at some of the wedges, actually you can see how thick the top edge is, particularly on the higher lofts. But again, internally there's mass in the hosel.
Yeah.
And you're actually trying to move the CG forward.
Yeah.
Was one of the key features of the SM9.
Yes.
To try and almost move it. You never get it in front of the face, but it was kind of the theory is if you could get it in front of the face, then it's going to pull everything down that little bit more.
Right, and I think that's a good one for golfers, and it can be a lot, but really we take a step back. If we move center of gravity higher on this 58 degree, as we go up the face, which has loft, going up is actually going to send it backwards as well, because we're following the angle on this 58 degree. As we go back, that can tend to leave the club face open at impact, which might give us a little more dynamic loft than we wanted. So for a right-handed golfer, potentially seeing that high, floaty one that just spins a bit too much, lands a bit too short and gets you in a lot of trouble.
Yep.
That's why CG is really important there as well. So by pushing that CG forward, we're able to square the club face up more at impact, get that ball flight doing what we want it to, and then you actually hitting your carry number. So again, something you can't see in there, but as you talked about, if you move hosel length up or down, you're going to move center of gravity. Top line, if it's thicker or thinner, you're going to make a change because it's really about moving mass. And of course, when we have 60-degree lob wedges, we have 5 different grinds.
Yeah.
So 5 unique soles on the same 60-degree wedge. The more material we move from one of those, the more we've got to move the center of gravity position to get back to where it is optimally. And then we have to do all of this and keep it looking really good. So pretty easy for R&D, but no, they have, that's why it takes a couple of years. We're working on product a good 2 or 3 years out, even further in advance with Bob Vokey and his team, to make sure that we're listening to what golfers need. That's not just tour players. We take advice from the world's best players, and then we try and make wedges that will suit every golfer. We believe that by doing that, we're going to give everyone the chance to find the right grind for them, depending on their playing style and, of course, the conditions they're in.
And the grinds as they've developed over the years, how much of that has been from tour feedback, but also they've changed shape quite dramatically over the years.
Right.
Whether it's the peak on the sole of some of if you take an M or ML, the kind of the graduated grinds were softer in shape and now a little bit steeper, a little more aggressive in terms of the shaping. The width on the K grind is where's the start point from that progression? Obviously, we see them come out every couple of years. You might see a prototype wedge in the tour player's bag, but where does the start point come from? Is it tour feedback or is it actually
Mostly. It starts with them. So that's really the heritage of the brand is Bob working with those players on tour and the best wedge players in particular. What do we need? What are some of the changes I need for my unique game? And what we've seen over time is, particularly on tour, conditions are becoming a little firmer, a little tighter. They're certainly very consistent, but as things get a little firmer, we're starting to see some of the grinds, like the T grind, for example, where this little ribbon on the back here of this M grind is actually very steep on the T grind. And the reason we do that is, again, as that player lays it open, the more steep we can cut that off the back, the more that leading edge is going to hug the turf. So it's going to give that player confidence. They're going to stand over an open face shot on those tighter lies and not be worried about this club bouncing and sending the ball over the back. And that really comes from those tour players. How often are they opening it? They're really good. They'll play it square a lot of the time. But in that situation where these guys are playing for a living, they want to lay it open. They don't want to get scared of what's happening next. This really helps it slide under. So in terms of, your question about grind progression, that's really what we've seen over time is what are the players looking for? What are the course conditions they're in? And I just think, hey, number one, they're playing in really good conditions week to week. Not everyone gets that opportunity, and I know the course I play at, they're doing a really good job, but every second bunker is kind of different. So I think in that regard, it's really important to have wedges that complement in the setup. So you might have something that's a little more bounce in the sand wedge, a little lower bounce in the lob wedge, or if you come and see you guys and get fit, you might find it's the other way, but certainly having 2 options, and Bob does a really good job of this. Bob Vokey's always said it's about putting the right tools in the toolbox for the player. And so the more screwdrivers we can have in there, the more chance we've got of completing the job, as opposed to just kind of copy paste the gap, sand and lob wedge. But again, spending time with a fitter is going to help you find those.
And one of the bits that people often wouldn't see in terms of the progression of the grooves themselves, and the milling patterns from the lower lofts to the higher lofts, you go wider and shallower in the higher lofts, and potentially just not the same widths all the way up the face as well, to get more grip for partial swings versus deeper and narrow on the lower lofts to get the moisture away from the contact, more bit of a fuller shot. How much of that's dictated by the ball development and the cover materials? Is that, how much of a consideration is that within what you're doing? So in looking forward, you'll have input from, one would assume you'd have input from the ball developers as well as to what they're doing, and how much are you having to think about that with?
Two work really closely, and in fact, we work very closely with the irons team, particularly on sole design and grooves, and then we work with the ball team.
Integrated some Vokey
design
on the T200, 300.
Absolutely. So, same with the golf ball team. Making sure that we're testing the latest and greatest there, and keeping an eye on what they've got coming. But fine, there's not a huge difference there in terms of that. What we are seeing though, and you talked about it, was the difference in grooves for lower lofts versus higher lofts. I think to understand that, you need to understand the role of what does a groove do. And it's really there to channel all the debris into the groove so the ball can hit the edge of the groove. Not so much the texturing on the face. What we're really seeing get grip is that ball hitting the edge of the groove, and that's what's going to get you spin. So I get a question a lot, even when I'm practicing at home and someone comes up and says, how did you spin it like that? Well, kind of a three-part thing. Number one, you got to make sure you got the right golf ball. Okay, so getting fit and getting the right golf ball, that's going to help. Number two, you need fresh grooves. Just like you need fresh tread on a tire on your car, you need to have fresh grooves. And then really number three, clean your grooves. Make sure that everything's out of there, because their sole purpose is to get all that debris, like I said, into the groove so the ball can hit the edge of it. If you get that, you're going to get that feeling of the ball really sticking to the face. It's going to shoot out low and spin a lot more. So I think...
And number four, technique is the other bit.
Technique's important. Yeah, we can control the first one really easily, and the second one we can get better at.
If you haven't practiced and you've got no technique, you ain't going to spin it.
Right, and I think that's a great point of... We just talked about center of gravity, we just talked about grooves, and there's a lot of really good stuff going on in R&D to make sure we're hitting those optimal targets there. All that goes out the window if you get the wrong grind and you hit it fat. Or if you hit it thin, all that's gone. So it's really important to get the right grind for the right contact, and then those other things are going to come as well.
There isn't a grind to make me enjoy a wet upslope in winter with a 40-yard wedge shot.
You might have to lay up, get back to the flat.
Just to get the 3-wood out and chip and run it.
Yeah.
But I think it's great getting the insights from the inside out, and the way you guys look at them. And obviously, another range launching in the new year. So it's going to be exciting to see what comes from then. It's going to be kind of a March time launch. But what are aspects from this particular model, the SM9s, that have been particularly pleasing and successful? Is there anything in particular from this range that you feel has made a really kind of step change in terms of performance?
Yeah, I think, Bob's always had this from tour players over the years. They say, hey, Bob, you could have done this with the last one. He said, no, I couldn't. We spent 2 years working on this. We're always looking for those improvements, and it comes from them, those players. The two things, there's a few, but certainly two that stand out for me with SM9 are, number one, the groove cutting process. That changed, that improved. The tolerances are much tighter, which means we can create a more exact groove over and over again, making sure that, hey, not only the first shot out of the box, but 6 months from now, that groove is still working. We're still getting consistent spin. And I think, as grooves wear out over time, and that does happen, they'll spin a little bit less over time, but I think the most important thing is you don't know when they're going to spin and when not. So consistency of spin and launch is a big one. So we're really proud of the changes we've made to the groove cutting process. You're going to have much more consistent spin for longer. And then the other part is that center of gravity. Again, scary topic, but it's really about distance and trajectory control. If we can flight the ball lower, it's going to come out faster, carry further, and it will stop quicker. So for those players out there trying to hit a little higher to stop it, you don't need to do that unless you have to go up and over something.
Yeah.
Last time I checked, most bunkers are underground, so we don't need to hit it really high. But honestly, the best players in the world, the best wedge players at your club will flight it in lower and stop it quickly that way. So we work really, really hard with a bunch of different players and a lot of testing at TPI to make sure we hit the optimum number there. And the easy way to do it, and you guys do a great job here indoors because you can see it very clearly with the launch monitor, is general rule of thumb we look at is if this 60-degree lob wedge was being struck with a pitch shot now, we want to see that launch coming out at about half the loft.
Yep.
So 60-degree wedge, probably 30-degree launch. Lower is better, you're going to spin it more. But if you're seeing it at 33, 34 degrees, to your point, that could be your action, it could be the wrong grind. Maybe we just don't have the right wedge and we need that center of gravity to help us. It's also a good way to check if your grooves are wearing out. So again, like the tires, where you can see if a tire is wearing out, not so easy when it comes to grooves, but launch is key. If that ball launches higher than it used to, it will carry shorter and it will roll up to the pin. That's when we know those grooves are starting to wear out.
Yeah, because that's the thing in the dry environment we have here, and if you get a completely dry line, of course, you don't need much groove to get spin, but you said the launch angle changes quite a bit. So it's that almost spin relative to launch angle ratio that...
and controlling that spin. You know, it's nice to see a lot of spin. I know when I was a junior, spinning the ball back was a really cool thing to do, but these days, if it spins back 30 feet, I don't want a 30-footer.
I've got false fronts on the course I play, and then you've got a chip.
Right, so maintaining spin and then flighting the ball is key. So we're proud of those two things because we genuinely feel that we can help you get a better short game. If we get you fit to the right grind, those other two things will take care of themselves. Distance gapping is obviously very important, but pretty easy too. It's a math exercise at the end of the day, but again, finding the right bounce and grind is important. So just because we've got two 52-degree wedges or two 50s with different bounces, doesn't mean they're the same. That 8-degree 50 might play very different to someone, say, playing a 52-12. So getting fit for the right sole, again, is key.
I think just to kind of round off, I think with and going on to that balance side of things, where are you seeing? Are you seeing from a tour player side of things, they're playing a variety of bounces through their bag? I mean, we often get asked, should I be playing the same bounce across? And obviously, we get such different, they play such different conditions week in, week out.
Yes.
Similar but different grass types, different sand types.
Right.
Whereas we get wet and horrible in the winter and then rock solid in summer. So that variety is key. But in terms of fitting someone into the right bounce, what would be, if there's a key thing that you would look for? That might be kind of asking an impossible question because I know how hard it is to. When people say, what's the right combination?
I think you've hit on a good point though of. If you're playing in different conditions throughout the year, you might attack the ball differently. You might have different needs. So there's an opportunity to look at when, why, maybe less bounce in summer, more bounce in the soft winter conditions. That's fine. Everyone's going to say, you just want to sell more wedges. Best players in the world are doing that. So we have tour players that have got 6 different grinds in the boot of their car right now. They don't use those all the time, but a little like we were talking before, having a 3-iron and a hybrid, and then just interchanging those when you need them. So again, just honestly, the most important thing is asking those questions and being fit. And then you'll work out, well, do I play that many rounds in those conditions? Or do I err on the side of this one? But in general, a rule of thumb we see on tour, they have a little more bounce in their sand wedge, a little less in their lob wedge. So they've kind of got the 2 different ends here, and they can hit every shot in between. On tour, certainly in the US, the most popular sand wedge is the 56F, so the one with the most bounce. The guys really want to get that bounce in so the ball can come out nice and low. Again, a game of opposites. But as that bounce number comes up, they can really control that flight and get more spin that way. If they want to lay it open, out of the trap, green side, they've got that option with a slightly lower bounce. And that's why the T grind's been really popular, and the M as well.
You say you've got to be pretty good with the T grind.
You've got to keep the speed up. Slow in soft conditions, probably not.
Are you seeing different? Do you see different on European tour, the US tour?
We do.
From those because there's, and even one could argue even bigger variety of conditions that the European tour players play in. But certainly, I think a less consistent, without wishing to disparage anything, a less consistent quality of condition. the grass types,
Yeah.
the growth, the grass coverage
Right.
is a little bit more variable than you'd see on US Tour.
I think we see it from region to region as well. So even here in Europe, on tour, we'll see different wedges being selected for different parts. So if you think about a parkland course or a nice heathland course, and then you go and play a links style, they could be really different, even at the same time of the year. So we definitely see that. And then even in the US, you know, we have very similar to here in the UK, that northeast, nice and soft. It gets a little baked out in summer. So there's questions there of do I, don't I, what do I use? But then if they go down south into Florida, they get really grainy grass, and that's a different beast. So you've got to have something that
For a
moves.
Brit, that's miserable for a Brit.
Yes.
Into grain chip.
If you're a player who wants to
Miserable.
put the hands forward and get the leading edge in, it's really tough. So more bounce, wider sole becomes a little more popular there.
And so, I mean, thank you for your time, your insights. I mean, we could stand here and talk forever, but there's only so much video people are going to want to watch. But I think it's so interesting having the time to talk with you and talk through kind of our sort of validation of our concepts of how the way we fit indoors. And we often get asked, how do you fit for wedges indoors? And we're only saying how actually the variety of shots and lies and conditions that one plays in year round, let alone different courses. Wherever you get fit, you've got to fit for a kind of a mean, the average type of shot, the average type of condition,
Yes.
and then the variety of shots someone hits. So it was great hearing that from you as well, because we've always felt the same thing. But here you go. Actually, that's a very good point.
Well, I think we've always said fitting's really important, right? We're on the same page there. But I think as a golfer, what's in it for me as the golfer? If I go and get fit, I guarantee you're going to have a better short game. So go and get fit. It doesn't take long. It's painless, I promise. You don't have to remember every grind. You don't have to be an expert on bounce. That's why these guys are here. Go and see the guys and get fit, because 45 minutes later, we're going to find not only the right setup for distance gapping and whatnot, shafts, length, lie angle. We'll take care of all of that stuff. Just come on in, answer a few questions about what are you looking for in that toolbox and what conditions are you playing in. Let's have a look at your action and match you up that way. And if you do that, promise you'll have a better short game. And of course, that's the part of the game that we can have, I think, the biggest impact on in the quickest amount of time. So go ahead and mark your ball at 3 feet while you're waiting for your partner to chip it on. That's kind of what we want from here.
It's a nice weight, that. Corey, thank you so much for your time.
Welcome.
Great
Thanks
to have
for
you,
having
really. And hope everyone enjoyed that. And we'll catch up again soon. Maybe January in Orlando.
That'd be great.
Potentially.
Thanks.
Thanks, Corey.